for joining us for another chapter of the podcast Criminal Law with Shayel. Today, I have three guests, Noah, Yali, and Ellie.
Hello.
Good morning. Hi, everybody. At this chapter, we're going to discuss the interesting case of Thomas Lubanga Dyilo. Thomas made history in 2012. He was the first person to be convicted by the International Criminal Court. He was found guilty of the grave charges of recruiting children under the age of 15 in the armed forces, forcing them to participate in hostilities within the Democratic Republic of Congo. Therefore, Lubanga was given a 14-year prison sentence. I decided to put Lubanga on the podcast because of his significance in the world of international law. After a decade in which the ICC exceeded Thomas Lubanga, was the first to be convicted of the war crimes. The fact that there were children abused in the Lubanga case made me want to investigate this case in depth. For all of the listeners who are not fond of this case, I will give you a brief background of Lubanga. The background of Lubanga's case lies the conflict in the Democratic Republic of Congo, particularly in the Ituri region, which was being characterized by ethnic tensions and competition over control and land of resources. Lubanga was the founder and leader of the Union of Congolese Patriots, which was characterized and rebel group. The group involved the conflict that broke out in 1999 and lasted for several years, leading to widespread violence and atrocity committed by various armed groups. Lubanga's arrest and trial in the ICC forced on his role in the recruitment and deployment of children soldiers during the conflict. The prosecution claims that Lubanga forces kidnapped 11-year-old children, trained them to fight, and used them as soldiers in the conflict. The parties violate international law, particularly in the Rome Statute, which established the ICC and prohibits the recruitment and use of children soldiers under the age of 15. So Noah, can you tell me the procedural history of this case?
Of course. The case began with an arrest warrant issued on February 10, 2006 for Thomas Lubanga. Transfer to The Hague. Lubanga was handed over by the Congolese authorities and transferred to The Hague on March 16, 2006. The hearing on the confirmation of the charge took place between November 9 to November 28, 2006. The pre-trial chamber confirmed the charge and the trial began shortly thereafter. Freezing on proceeding. On June 13, 2008, the court decided to delay the proceeding against Lubanga due to concern about the fairness of the trial. The trial chamber lifted the stay of the proceeding on November 18, 2008, and the trial resumed. Trial proceeding. The trial began on January 26, 2009 and ended on August 26, 2011. The verdict. On March 14, 2012, the first trial chamber delivered its verdict, finding Thomas Lubanga guilty as an accomplice to war crimes related to recruiting children under the age of 15 and using them to actively participate in war crimes. Sentencing. On July 10, 2012, the Chamber of Justice sentences Lubanga to a total of 14 years in prison with credit for time served in criminal court custody. Appeal process. The verdict and the sentence were appealed, and on December 1st, 2014, the appeals chamber confirmed the guilty verdict and the sentence. Implementation of the sentence. On December 19, 2050, Lubanga was transferred to the prison in Congo to serve his prison sentences.
I will add and say that the correct charges against Lubanga represent international war crimes and human rights violation that include the right to liberty and freedom from slavery and torture. Every person is entitled to these rights without discrimination. Lubanga reduced children under the age of 15 and used them to actively participate on hostilities. UPC force, led by Lubanga, were involved in a number of other serious crimes in Ituri, including murder, torture, and sexual violence. UPC fighters kidnapped men, women, and children. They forced the victim to dig their own graves and then kill them with their hammer below of the head. International warfare often involves ignoring basic human rights. Addressing this in violation is essential for maintaining the dignity and well-being of people affected by armed conflict, help deter forces future involves, promoted peace and stability in areas affected by conflict, and seek justice for victims and their families. So Noah, what were the arguments of the parties?
In the case of Thomas Lubanga, the legal proceedings were conducted by the ICC, and the petitioner versus respondent format is not commonly used. Instead, the International Court of Justice refers to the parties as the prosecution and the defense. The prosecution in Thomas Lubanga case was presented by the Office of the Prosecutor at the International Criminal Court. The role of the prosecution was to present evidence and argue that Lubanga was guilty of the charges brought against him. The defense. Thomas Lubanga was represented by a team of lawyers who advocated his innocence. The defense aimed to cast doubt on the prosecution's case and secure an acquittal for Lubanga. The legal proceeding followed the adversarial system in which the prosecution and the defense presented their cases, call witnesses, and present arguments before the judge of the International Criminal Court. The judges then evaluated the evidence and legal arguments presented by both sides to reach the verdict.
Noah, can you tell me what is the legal issue of this case?
Yes, the legal issues addressed by the ICC in this case included: first, recruitment of child soldiers. Was Lubanga responsible of the recruitment, training, and use of child soldiers under the age of 15 in the context of armed conflict? Second, individual criminal responsibility. Determination of Lubanga's personal criminal responsibility for the alleged crimes, including his direct involvement or command responsibility. Third, fair trial rights. Ensuring that Lubanga's rights to a fair trial, including the rights of the defense, will be respected throughout the process.
Thank you so much, Noah. So Yali, what did the court decide in the end?
The court found Lubanga Dyilo guilty of recruiting children under the age of 15 into a protective force and using them to actively participants of hostilities. This conduct violated Article 8 of the Rome Statute, which prohibits the conspiration of children under the age of 15 into armed forces or group or using them to participate actively or hostilities. The court found that Lubanga Dyilo played a critical role in implementing a joint plan to build an army and maintain political and military control that included the recruitment and used the children under the age of 15 as soldiers. The decision was based on extensive evidence presented during the trial, including witness testimonies, video evidence, and documentary evidence. The sentence was quite controversial, and some arguing it was too lenient. There were appeals filed by both of the prosecution and Lubanga himself, but the appeals chamber ultimately upheld the conviction. Following the guilt verdict, trial chamber a procedure to sentence Lubanga Dyilo on July 10, 2012 to a total period of imprisonment. This sentence considered the time Lubanga Dyilo had already spent in the custody of the International Criminal Court. The decision of the court in this case represented a significant milestone in international criminal justice, as it marks one of the first convictions by the International Criminal Court for the enlistment of child soldiers was crimes.
Wow, and there were any judges who opposed this decision?
In the case of the prosecutor against Thomas Lubanga Dyilo, the majority decision upheld the charges against Lubanga based on the evidence presented during the trial, accepted that regarding the punishment aspect of the case, there was a dissenting opinion of one of the judges in the composition of the law chamber. Judge Odio Benito dissented from the majority's decision regarding the sentence imposed on Lubanga. He believed that the sentence of 14 years in prison was insufficient and did not sufficiently reflect the seriousness of the crimes committed.
Thank you so much, Yali. Ellie, can you tell me what is the consequences of the case were?
Of course. Legal President, the case proved that these acts are a crime according to the international humanitarian law. Therefore, his conviction helped establish a legal norm against child exploitation, which will help the court in the future to judge similar cases. Deterrence. His conviction sends strong message that anyone who commits such a crime will be prosecuted at the International Court of Justice for serious crimes against humanity. Protection of children. The case raised global awareness of the exploitation of children and the needs to protect them. This caused international organizations and government to take significant steps to rehabilitate children affected by this crime in the past and the present. So, in conclusion, the relevance of Thomas Lubanga case serves as a historical precedent and a call to action for ongoing effort to protect children in conflict and hold the criminal responsible for their crimes.
Girls, we've come to the end of today's podcast. I would love to hear what each of you learned from Thomas' case. So Noah, we can start with you.
Okay. The case highlights the critical importance of protecting children in armed conflict. We have seen the devastating impact of child recruitment and use and the need to take significant measures to prevent such abuse and ensure the well-being of children affected by conflict.
Yali, what do you think?
The case demonstrates the importance of justice and intervention in serious international crimes. It shows the duty and responsibility of the international community to prosecute criminals who commit war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide, regardless of their rule of statute.
So Ellie, what do you think?
The case raises awareness of the plight of child exploitation and broader issue of human rights violation. It was used an advocacy tool aimed to strengthening legal protections for children and promoting awareness of international humanitarian law.
So I think that in the end, if we sum this up, this case serves a reminder for our collective responsibility to protect the most vulnerable victims of armed conflict and upon basic principles of justice, accountability, and human rights. It pounds the center of ongoing efforts of the legal system to build a more just and peaceful world. Thank you for all of the listeners who joined us for the podcast today. Thank you, girls, for the very interesting conversation. See you in the next podcast.
Thank you.
Bye. See you next time.